So, you want to set the powder, general setting for just about everything you're going to run. You're going to be at half. So here's 1, here's 0. That's 0. That's 1. That's half. And then then this is what I've been told is the normal setting, 1 on this side over here. So if you want to go less powder, you go 0 there, and say, I don't know, if 1 works, start at 9, right? For a little less powder. But I've just worked at half and 1 pretty much always. The only time I change the powder, the amount of powder I use, is on a heavy coverage backup. So if both sides have pretty high coverage, in other words, a 4-color black on both sides, I might bring it up to 1 on coated paper. If it was on uncoated paper, I would bring it up to 1.5. But you have to remember to go back down to half when you go to a normal job. Otherwise, you're going to have so much powder, you're just going to be hating life. So you should put a piece of tape saying right here that says powder changed, or powder volume changed, or turn powder down on next job. Some sort of reminder right here saying what you've done. Just like if you ever turn the powder off for any reason on the delivery, you should have a piece of tape that says powder off, as big as you can get it, so that you remember to turn the powder back on. Next condition would be on, we do a lot of uncoated solids, and on an uncoated solid, on the very first pass, you might want to go up to 1. And if it's a solid on both sides, you might want to go up to 1.5. I've never gone to 2, and this has always worked out fine. We haven't had any real problem where it botched a job. So those are your general settings for the powder.
Can you explain the conditions and how you might recognize that there's too much powder or not enough powder?
Okay, if there's too much powder, say your press run is about 2,000 on a 80-pound tex weight sheet of paper, and you're backing up from the first side, and your first blanket is just getting covered with powder to the point where you have to stop and wipe the powder off every 500 sheets, that's way too much powder. If it affects your screens, if you have a 4-color screen build, generally it takes anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 sheets before you have enough powder that it might start affecting the screen. So you might have to stop, wipe the powder down with water, and start back up again. That's pretty normal. If it's like 500 sheets, that's way too much powder. There you'll see that red rod that's just about touching the powder, or touching the powder. I can't really tell.
You can see it.
Okay. So is it actually touching the powder, or is it just off the powder? I can't see.
I can't tell.
Okay. Anyway. Okay, I can see it's off the powder. So that's the point where we should have added powder before it got to this level. That red rod that's running into the powder unit does 2 things. It serves as a sensor to tell whether or not the powder level is too low. If the powder level gets to the point where it stops touching it, you'll get an indicator on the console, a flashing powder symbol that'll tell you, hey, you got to put some powder in the unit. It also, I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe it's also a heating element and helps keep the powder dry, prevents moisture by heating up the powder a little bit. So ideally, when you're adding powder, you never want to fill the powder to the point where it comes to the top of the screen, because if moisture gets in there, it really doesn't have a way to escape. Then the powder will clot, and then you'll start having offsetting problems. So ideally, you want to fill the powder just to the top of the glass and no further, so that you leave a little bit of an air gap in there so the powder doesn't collect a lot of moisture and retain it. So right there, if you look inside there, you can see the light, which means that you haven't quite gotten up to the top of the glass. And if you look down the side here, ideally you only want to fill to the top of this red line here. I'm a little bit higher, but there's still enough of an air gap inside there between the filler and the glass container for moisture to escape.